Good morning, everybody. We're almost ready. Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Welcome to the Monday, September 9th, can't believe it's September already, 2024 Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee. So thanks, everybody. Have we heard, Brittany, whether Veronica's coming late? Okay, well, we have all the other members here, so thanks, everybody. And do we have any public comment, Brittany?
I believe Irene and Brian are filling out some forms.
Okay, they're busy filling out some forms. Okay.
I go first.
And you're also welcome to speak because we have some things from the case board. So,
I was going to.
But you want to do some stuff first, okay?
Yeah, speak on those, and then you can.
All right. So, who would like to go first?
Brian said I should go first.
Okay. We're a little informal this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So nice to be here. Fun to see your knickknacks. So I'm here to talk about, there's actually 3 items from CASE, the committee on, oh God, I'm blanking. What is happening to me this morning? Climate and sustainable energy. There we go. Moving right along, of which I am the vice president, chair, whatever. So I should be more conversant. But in any case, sorry, you guys, I'm a little punchy, is to encourage you to please make this committee a permanent committee. It's been, originally it was kind of ad hoc, then it became, and 3 years ago, it was appointed as a temporary 3-year committee. Climate change ain't leaving us. We've got enormous expertise in this community. I hope that you'll agree that we've been very helpful in advising the committee as to the work that we do, and so I urge you to turn that into a permanent committee, as you know, it's this fall when you reauthorize committees. So that's number 1. Number 2 is I just wanted to highlight some of the work that we did recently that I hope you all will appreciate, which is submitting comments to the Public Service Commission about NYSEG's plan for resiliency. So how are they going to manage things when there's storms? What are they going to do to harden the grid? Their plan was really inadequate, and we provided comments as to the kind of problems that we saw with that plan. So, you guys don't need to do anything with that. Those plans have been submitted, but it's just an example of the kind of work that we do, some of which is focused locally and some of which, is talking to the state and their regulators, but ultimately have impacts here as well as, for NYSEG across their service territory. And the third is to urge you to support the resolution that we've brought before you. So, I hope that you'll craft one of yours in support of the green building policy. I know money is tight, it's hard to pay for everything, but this is an instance, in my view, of penny wise and pound foolish to not continue to fund these buildings. There's a lot of money on the table right now in grants and such, and we lose opportunity for all of that if we don't move forward with the green building plan. This is something that, basically would be reneging on the promise and that's been made to this community, that when it was passed, there was a lot of support for moving forward with green building. And so it really just, in my view, just doesn't, it's not good. It's not good to back off on those policies at this point. I know money's tight. In my view, this is the kind of thing that fund balance is for. It's hard to put fund balance to ongoing stuff, but to use fund balance for one-time expenditures, in my view, makes a lot of sense. I also, in Caroline, I know we used fund balance to offset tax increase. I certainly welcome that as well, but not the only thing that we do. You know, when there's significant one-time expenses, that's what fund balance is there for. It's the rainy day. It's the what can we do to move things forward in a one-time expenditure. And so I'd like you and the rest of the legislature to please consider that, and consider the money that you'll be leaving on the table if you don't continue to fund and move forward with the green building policies. So thanks.
Thank you, Irene, who is also, as she mentioned, a former Town of Caroline town council person.
Good morning. I'm usually working now, and I'm not very talkative or, able to communicate very well, but I'll try my best. In the, like 15 years ago, I was the chair of the EMC's Energy Committee, and, and as the climate declined, it seemed clear there was a lot of work to be done. And I talked to Ed Marks, who was then the director of the Planning and Sustainability Department, and he agreed, and they formed a county committee, which was called Energy Roadmap Steering Committee, and out of that committee came the Climate Action Plan and a lot of things that the county is doing now. And then we followed that with the Energy Task Force, and then the Climate and Sustainable Energy Advisory Board. I think we served a role, and I think we're quite active, and we have a lot of engaged people with expertise, so I hope that we can continue that committee into the future. The other thing is affordability has become a huge theme. Nationally, it's the major theme. It's that, we can't afford to do what we need to do for self-preservation. And it's slipped over into New York. The governor recently talked about cutting back on the New York climate law. And the fossil fuel groups have been opposed to the climate law before it was passed. And after it was passed, they invested a lot of money in scaring people, like we're going to take away their gas stoves and we're going to make them pay $50,000 to electrify their houses. And it's worked. It's worked. In Western New York, there's tremendous opposition to the climate law. And the governor is from Western New York, so she's receptive to that. We recently were in Syracuse for the governor's Energy Economic Summit. And, we're moving away from what we need to do, reduce our consumption, have more energy efficient equipment and produce a lot more renewable energy. But, specifically with regard to this budget problem here we have, I think it's incredibly important that we signal to the community that this is not optional, that we need to continue with our commitment we made in 2021. And everybody wants to reduce taxes. I understand that. But then we have the adults in the room. No, that's always not the best option. We have higher taxes in New York, and we have better services in New York. So hopefully we get something, and that's your job, to make sure we get something for our investment. And I think you get a lot for this investment, and I think it's going to take some. I understand. I've talked to a few legislators that are adamant about we're doing this. We're cutting across the board. No option there. But I think it's just incredibly important to continue with the commitment that we've made before. And, climate mitigation is not a choice. Many places, not here, but other places like Florida and California, people can't get insurers for their homes. Or if they get insurers, the expense is so high, it's like confiscatory. This is coming. It's not here, but it's coming, and we need to be prepared for it. So I hope you'll be able to convince some of your other legislators that they should stay on board with us. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Brian. That's Brian Eden. Okay, so next is changes to the agenda, and I want to make one minor change. When we get down to the case board, I want to just switch A and B, just to do the comments to NYSEG first, and then the resolution for the green facilities, second. And just want to make a quick comment on one of the things that Irene was saying. She kept talking about our green buildings. For the county, we have a green building policy, and then we call our green and the actual green initiatives our green facilities plan. So just, so I think we all know that here, but just make sure we're not talking about our green policy, green building policy. Okay, thanks everybody. Chair's report is next, and there's a couple of things I want to just mention before we get in. We're going to review just really quickly, just go down through the strategic operations plan, the items that pertain to peak. But first I wanted to, we don't have anybody from administration here today, but I heard some, since we're in budget season, I heard some chatter about at least a question or a concern about one of the OTRs regarding CCE, Cornell Cooperative Extension. So I'll check with administration if they want us to collect those questions, and I'd volunteer to do that if they want the committee to do that, or if administration wants to field those questions to CCE. So if you have any questions, stay tuned, and I'll let us know where we can funnel those. And then the second thing I wanted to mention was this was, let's see, I believe this was on Thursday that the governor convened an energy economy summit in Syracuse. And I know there was some folks here that went up to protest that. I was invited, as other people might have been invited to attend that. This is something they have every couple of years that the governor convenes. And I went to it once or twice before. It's often filled with industry experts or industry interests, and that's and also government officials. This year they had federal officials, state officials, including the governor, stop by at the beginning. And but the focus of, and often they'll talk about maybe some innovative things that are happening as far as energy. This year, the day-long summit was totally focused on nuclear. And so I wasn't able to go to it, but I was able to get a link to it. So I watched it online, and they went through the whole day and went at it different ways of how industry wants it, how people now aren't so upset about nuclear that maybe they'd be okay about it. So it was making all these different arguments of how nuclear is the solution for New York State. So I was very disturbed by that. Like that's the thing we're going to do, and we're going to do that across New York State, and that's what we need to do. So there was mention of some other energy. I mean, they call this as part of renewable energy. I don't call it part of renewable energy for a couple of reasons. But anyways, I was a bit disturbed that it wasn't talked about with a plan for other things. It was kind of like, this is our big solution here. So stay tuned for more information on that. And so next, thanks Brittany for writing out our strategic operations plan. So this is page 2 we'll go on to in the agenda. And I'm actually just going to, actually, let me just think a second. So, because Leo, you're here, I'm sorry, and you're here for just one item. So did you want to do your one item? Let's see if any of these, the rethinking waste I know is part of that. But so why don't we do yours and then see if there's anything you want to mention in the strategic operations plan so we can let you go. And so sorry about that. Let's switch down to, there's just an information item on packet page 4, for the Department of Recycling Materials Management. This is the capital summary recycling, as I said, Materials Management Department. And is there any questions on this or anything you wanted to say, Leo?
No, that's Barton LaJudas, and it just has to do with the current construction project we have going on over at the facility, which we're nearing the end. And
Is that the upgrades of the building?
Yes, yep. And then they have started some work on our next project, which we'll be bidding that out hopefully October. And that's just addressing the front of the recycling solid waste center, new atrium there and gutters, and it's a smaller project, so. Yep.
No culverts?
No.
Okay, one of my favorites, but I love gutters too.
Yeah.
Good drainage, overall. Got to have good drainage. Okay, thanks. Any questions on that? Alrighty, so let's get back to the strategic operations plan.
I do have a question for Leo, though.
Go ahead.
You proposed a $2 increase in the annual solid waste fee. How much funding does a dollar create?
Well, with the changes that we made to the formula on the annual fee regarding college and universities, we are projecting $1 to equal roughly 62,000, I believe. So $1 on the annual fee will bring in 62,000.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And if I may,
Sure.
how much are we expecting the formula change to have increased or decreased with colleges and universities? Do you know that off the top of your head?
Well, that's a tough one because it's student enrollment will drive the annual fee a little higher. Decreases in student enrollment will bring it down. I want to say, well, I have those records. We did the analysis,
Yeah.
last year, and I'd rather reference that, I think, to.
And just, sorry, I apologize. I know I should know this because it was part of those conversations. So I apologize because I'm blanking and putting you on the spot. This is the first year where those changes will be in effect?
Second year.
No,
Second year.
2024 was the first year.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this is the second year. Got it, all right,
Yep.
thanks. I apologize it seems like we just started a month ago.
It does to me too,
And
Greg.
it was also 10 years. So not really sure where we are today, but thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, so those fees have been in effect about 3/4 of a year so far.
Yes.
Okay, because I know this time last year we were talking about them. Okay. Yeah, I think a lot of us are having a little trouble this Monday morning. So thank goodness the agenda is pretty late. So regarding the $2 fee, I'll get back to that, the $2 increase. That's something that's been planned? That's not something that you just thought of for this year, right? Is this part of a couple-year plan?
So, we experienced some issues with leachate earlier in the year, spring of the year. We talked about it quite a bit here. What was driving it's the volumes, I guess, of leachate at Caswell mainly that drove some of the issues. But we also had some changes with the Ithaca wastewater treatment plant on some of their conditions for acceptance and change of hours and that sort of thing. So on the heels, really, of what we went through with some challenges earlier in the spring, coupled with an assessment that was done by our engineers on both closed landfills in August of 2023. Together, coupled with those two things, we put together the capital project to have some work done and the leachate tanks at both landfills. The annual fee, well, let me say, there's no revenue that comes into our department to address or pay for anything in our old landfill budget. So in other words, there's no tipping fees, there's no grants or anything. So the $2 on the annual fee is just strictly covering the increased operational costs that we're projecting for next year. Yeah.
Okay, and you'll go into that more when you talk to us about the budget?
Yeah. Yeah.
Randy?
Sorry to put you on the spot here, Leo, but I was looking at the strategic operations plan and priorities, and one of them is implement strategies in rethinking the waste plan. So in this year, you guys focused on really re-energizing your programs and focusing on improving those and whatnot. Is there funding for that in 2025, and how are we rethinking waste and how we're going to, I mean, we want to close landfills, but it's tough to do when we keep sending waste there. I know you're doing an RFP for some programs. So I'd like to see something more aggressive about reducing the amount of product go to landfills. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know if there's really any like specific funding. Of course, you know, a portion of the annual fee is directed toward our waste diversion program. You know, I think what we've done this year or recently is get staffed appropriately. So we've been putting a lot of efforts into filling some vacant positions. We've got an assistant recycling specialist on board now. I think she's been there maybe a month and a half, and her name's Ren Kingsley, and she's right out of the gate very well. And so she's already researching and putting together, working with Kat on some plans for Skip the Stuff. We talked about that, I think, earlier in the year. So she's going to become familiar with that and look to work with a couple of restaurants to kind of get an inside good understanding of that program. So that's what we're moving toward, are some of those types of initiatives that we've got going. We're also taking a step back, and we're updating all the solid waste laws in the county. So we're working with Westlaw Group on that. If you remember, they were written 30 years ago. A lot of loopholes in there, and there's just a lot of outdated text, if you will. So that's another thing that we're working toward. You know, the laws are going to kind of be the first thing, I guess, to get the foundation good and solid with our programs, and then move different things forward. Yeah.
Thank you.
Looking at enforcement and things like that.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
And I'd like to, I guess, just add one more thing, seeing how we were there on enforcement. We haven't had a solid waste code enforcement officer for probably four years or so. And we do have a part-time 20-hour per week code enforcement officer in the 2025 budget. So I just thought I'd make mention of that too. Yeah.
I'd like to add that I would, if it implemented things that really worked. So thanks.
Thank you, just writing that down. So that's great to hear. You have a part-time code enforcement position for 2025.
Yes.
How many hours about?
20.
20, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Leo.
Welcome.
Thank you. And I see, I don't know if Kat's on here, just wondering if there, at some point in the next couple of months, if we would be having an update on the rethinking waste, skip the stuff we had talked about with your new staff position too?
Yeah, absolutely. We can definitely bring an update as we're kind of moving forward with that process. Right now, we're in the research and just kind of learning what other programs out there are, kind of how they're moving forward, what some of their challenges are, and then we're going to be taking a look internally to say, how does this fit with our Rebusiness Partners program, and what can we look at as we're moving forward and trying to test that out with a couple businesses. So as we move further along, we can certainly continue to bring updates and more specifics.
Great, thank you very much. And thank you, Leo.
Welcome.
Okay, and so moving back to the strategic operations plan. So unpack page 2. So number 1 was, is reduce emissions in county operations, which, refers, the biggest, one of the biggest thing, or the biggest area that we have that causes emissions is buildings, which is part of what we'll be talking about in a little while. Part of that is also our electric vehicles, which again, we're talking about in budget, that it's difficult to purchase more electric vehicles because they do cost money. And so I'm just going to go over each one and just see if anybody has any questions. I mean, we're going to go over these more with each department when they come, but I'll just see if anybody wants to make any comments. Any comments, questions on the first one? We don't have that department here today, Department of Planning. Second one, develop and implement programs that promote reduction in community greenhouse emissions. And again, we don't have the Department of Planning here, but
Katie's here.
Hey, Katie's here.
oh, Katie's here. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there.
Yep.
Yeah, did you want to say anything about any of those?
Yeah, I would say that we, late fall is when we start developing our work program for the next year, and we definitely intend to take a look at all the actions that we've been identified as the lead on in the strategic operations plan, and make sure that we are moving forward with those goals as part of our work program activities in 2025.
Okay, I'm just going to continue to read the other ones, and the response is similar to, or would be what Katie just said there. So they'll be working on their plan: reduce flooding and improve habitat corridors, improve water quality and reduce sediment and phosphorus, combat impacts of drought, and improve water supply resiliency. So any comments on those? Greg?
Yeah, thanks. I'm just wondering how we're working with or supporting the city as we look towards reducing flooding and things like that. I know reducing flooding and improving habitat corridors. I know that flooding is a big issue, and at some point, if not addressed, we will face major flooding. So I just want to see, what the partnership or relationship between those, between the county and the city and other municipalities as well that are maybe more prone to flood in certain areas.
And if I can tag on to your question, even if we do everything that we can think of, we could still have it. But right, I'm trying to
absolutely
mitigate.
Yeah, lessening the severity as opposed to.
Yeah.
Well, I would say we did get awarded a grant in the last CFA round a year ago from the DEC to study 6 Mile Creek and looking for erosion areas, but also potential areas for flood storage. That is still in the contracting stage, trying to get that all squared away so we can start that work. In the meantime, we also applied for the similar grant program for $75,000 to study Fall Creek. So we are looking at potential upstream flood mitigation opportunities. That's what we're doing on that front. But also, we've been working, trying to identify resources to share with people who might not understand flood insurance and how that process works, who offers it in the community, what it means. Trying to get, we had the original idea of interviewing local experts and then realized that there are actually a lot of resources pre-made out there already from FEMA and other places. So vetting those and making sure we find the best resources to create one-stop place on a website, and probably have some outreach meetings as well to let people know what this means to them, and how they can potentially request some mitigation, what that process looks like, or just what it looks like, period, in terms of premiums, et cetera.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, Katie. I didn't expect you to have to come today, but thank you.
Yeah, sure.
All righty, and then let's move on to our agenda. So we don't think we have anybody from county admin. They didn't say anything about?
They are all attending.
Okay. And so why don't we move on to number 8, which is the issue or the topics from the Case Board, Climate and Sustainable Energy Board. So let's start on packet page 9. I wanted to do so this is the Case Board comments regarding the NYSEG resiliency plan. And if you had a chance to read through all these comments, I know they're lengthy. And what I'm going to ask at this point, we're going to pretty much limit this to just kind of reviewing this. This isn't something that we have to approve or anything, but if folks have questions from those at the Case Board, we can have them come to the table. But just want to say, like, the gist that I got out of reading this and listening to the comments at the Case Board was that the NYSEG resiliency plan is pretty much just totally misses the mark from their own analysis of what they need to do. And the basics of what they're doing, the main thing that they're doing is they're just increasing the temperature threshold of some of their transformers, and that isn't even adequate. But never mind thinking about how all the other parts of their transmission system could be affected. They didn't really look at, could they put things underground? Are they going to be prepared for multiple things happening, like increasing temperature, plus weather events, mass outages? It just seems like they've just totally dropped the ball. Vegetation cutting, they're just really not doing much at all. And this is a for-profit company, and a lot of things that they cite is it costs money, and we see they've already raised rates 62% recently. So I'm just pretty disappointed, to say the least, reading this. So do we have any questions on the Case Board's comments? What did other folks think reading this? Randy?
Yeah, I really appreciate your focus on NYSEG or our power suppliers. I still can't believe somehow that a company that is in Spain somehow owns this NYSEG, and so they have no skin in the game at all, other than watching their profit margins. So I appreciate you going after that. One of the things and I didn't read all this, I think I read most of it. One of the issues that we've dealt with recently in Enfield were 2 fires that were caused by down lines for NYSEG. One of them, they lost a building and took them 16 hours to respond. And the only reason they responded because a retired NYSEG employee happened to jump in, and he called a local guy who knew how to shut the power off, and it took him 10 minutes once they showed up, but the building got lost. And then there was another fire of a house that the fire department showed up. They couldn't even respond to the fire because the lines were in their way, and they were live. So we reached out. I reached out to.
And this is both in Enfield?
Both in Enfield. And one was about 8 weeks ago, and the other one was last year. But they're so inadequate. I also have heard many stories, as I'm sure everybody else has, of the billing mess. And even our own county, we were supposed to get credits for the use of water power, and they $100-some thousand that they under-credited us. So I don't trust their billing whatsoever.
Yeah.
So all you can do to go after them, I'm behind you.
Yeah.
So.
Go ahead, Irene.
Can I respond? Randy, thank you for that information about what's happened out in I'm sorry, did you say Enfield or Newfield? I forget.
Was it Lower Enfield?
In
Southern?
Enfield?
It was
Okay.
on Hines Road. It was on Hines Road.
Okay.
Hines Road in Enfield.
I'd really like to get that information from you and file a complaint with the Public Service Commission.
I can get to
That is fully unacceptable, and there's a process in place. NYSEG has fallen down historically, as you've sort of indicated, on their safety compliance stuff. A couple of years ago, there was a gas leak, and it was not here, it was wherever it was. It wasn't local, but there was a gas leak, and a horrific inept response from the company to the gas leak, that they got there and they didn't have the equipment they needed, and then they got the equipment they needed and found the battery was dead and blah, 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 blah. And meanwhile, they had evacuated people, thank goodness, but the house burned to the ground with this gas leak before, 4 hours later, they finally shut it off. And there's, just ongoing stories like this. It's horrific, and the Public Service Commission needs to know, and I'll be sure, Randy, do you have my email? Do you have my email? Or I certainly have yours, so I'll get in touch, and we'll file something with the Public Service Commission because they need to hear about that. Is the billing sorted out at this point? I know my billing is still, it's obtuse. I cannot figure out what's going on with my own billing. I keep getting credits and don't know what's happening. But this was a public, just to refer back to this report, that was a specific public hearing and report opportunity requested by the Public Service Commission in response to NYSEG's resiliency plan. But there's certainly other issues that we could raise as concerns, and I can talk to the Director of Consumer Affairs. He's actually offered to potentially come down here to talk with us. So
I'll share one more other item. The county, we spend a lot of money on electricity, and so we wanted some data from NYSEG related to our consumption of utilities over the last 5 years, and we were told that they couldn't go back more than 2 years because they lost the data. So that's just amazing to me, which it can't be true. They have the data.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's, so I mean, they're just really inadequate in too many ways. So.
okay, I'll get in touch with the Director of Consumer Affairs. He talked to me about coming down, so I'll make sure that happens and keep you posted.
Yeah, those cases that Randy talked about are just egregious, that like somebody lost an outbuilding. I mean, both cases, there were sparking wires. I know when I started in home inspection 2006, I would call NYSEG, I would start an inspection, and I start on the outside, and so if I would see a potential suspected gas leak or a potential live wire that was exposed on their service, I would tell people, because they would say, how long does it take to come? And I said, because I was always check that first. And I would say, before I'm done with the outside of the house, they'll be here. And they always were. Within 15 minutes.
I was going to say, I think their requirement is 30 minutes. So
yeah, within 15, 30 at the most. But usually they were like right there to check this suspected thing. And now we're talking days. That with sparking wires, that is just, yeah, that's so dangerous. They are just not doing what they minimally need to do to keep us safe. So thank you. And thank you to the case board for preparing these. Yeah, real quick, Brian.
Real quick, what I want to say is, You know, and Katie would know better than I. You know, years ago, we wanted to study the areas for economic development in the area, and we hired TRC to see what the strain on electricity and gas was for different areas, 4 different areas. And they had a really difficult time getting the data for that, you know, so that's not a problem. The other thing I want to say is, you know, I've been on 3 consecutive rate case discussion, hundreds of hours each time, and we focus on the vegetation management, and it hasn't been getting better, and the weather is getting worse, and you know, NYSEG has a lot of roadside miles, more than any other utility, and they went from a 5-year cycle trim to a 6-year cycle trim. And one of the things they didn't study in this resiliency report is undergrounding facilities, because we know the weather's going to get worse. We have a lot of trees, and it's expensive. But if you look at a life cycle analysis, you might find that undergrounding, especially in urban areas, would be beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to packet page 6, and this is also from the case board. So this is a resolution that they passed. This is not on our agenda for us to pass, but if we were interested in doing something similar, we can talk about it afterwards. So this is for information only. This is urging support for the Tompkins County Facilities Department's 2025 budget request for green facilities. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of things in here. And they refer to our strategic operations plan adopted in June 2024, which we've already talked about, these exact things that are commitment to implement actions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and including our green fleet and green buildings capital program, and other policies that will hopefully lead to net zero greenhouse gas emissions for the county and county operations. And I'm going to skip down to the bottom of that page. Whereas the Facilities Department has submitted a $3.145 million project approval request, commonly referred to as a PAR form, for the 2025 county budget in order to be in the 3rd phase of the Green Facilities Project, which it anticipates will reduce 95.2, is that metatons? Metatons of carbon, does anybody know?
Metric tons.
Metric tons of carbon dioxide of annual greenhouse gas emissions. And I'm going to stop. Or I'll also mention that one last part is that there's an estimate that we could receive $4 million from the investment tax credit and other external funding sources for completing the scope of work as defined on the PAR form. So I'm going to, get more drilled down information here as we go on with the budget process. What exactly maybe we could, would it be if we got some of it started? Could we do some of it? And rather than looking at the bigger numbers. So I'll get back to you on that as we're going along in the next couple of weeks.
I do have a question on that, on one of the whereases.
Sure.
I know that Terry Carroll mentioned this. I see Katie's here, if she can answer this or not. But it says it's regarding the tax credit. We don't pay taxes. So I'm curious, how does that money, how do we get that money? Is it a grant, or how does that work? Katie, any ideas on that one? Or?
Yeah, it's actually, Terry would speak much better than I am about this, but it's called the IRA tax credit, and it is for municipal governments to be able to get compensated like it was a tax credit. That was part of the approval that we had recently from the legislature to allow us to participate in a cohort with the Lighthouse Group. We were selected as a pilot community to help us navigate this whole thing, because it on the face of it makes no sense at all that a municipal government would get tax credits. So it's figuring out how to fill out the forms correctly and apply so that we have the tools moving forward, and that honestly we could share our lessons learned with other municipalities that are navigating really this uncharted territory.
Thank you.
Good question. I was wondering that too. Thank you. Greg?
Yeah, I support this effort, and I support moving in this direction because it is desperately needed. I also understand the challenges of the budget constraint and trying to get 14 people or at least 8 people to agree on one direction, and as challenging as that may be. I would see, and to your earlier comment, some way that maybe we can pull in, for 2025 budget year, a few things, right? So we keep the momentum, and then we can look towards some of these other, potential funding sources or see if we have a banner year better than we expected, right? And we increase fund balance or whatever the case may be. I would hate to see this completely put on hold. So if there's something we can do to, again, take an incremental step, I know that is not necessarily enough or with the amount of urgency that's required in this situation. But I may have a strong feeling that could be manageable, and we could actually get something done rather than completely put it on, a pause. So if there's a way to kind of pick and choose a few key things that would somewhere fit, or where we would be able to get 8 members to support it, I think we should move in that direction. As much as it hurts me to say, I wish we could just do it all, I don't know if we actually, I don't know if we can, just yet. I think we need to keep taking steps forward, though.
Amanda?
Yeah, ditto. Basically. But yeah, I guess it's been a while, and I don't really know all the pieces of what is in the plan, and, it's been a long time since we've talked about the actual details. So, having that information would be helpful. And, we did ask everybody to make a 5% cut, so this is going to have to be cut to some extent too. But I would tend to agree, like, maybe we don't need to cut the entire thing. So yeah, I don't need to go on more about that, but it would be good to have more details from administration or, excuse me, or facilities, whoever can bring that back to us. And then this resolution says it's going to be sent to all legislators. I don't know if I saw it in my email or.
I think it was just sent.
Okay, all right, great, thanks.
Randy?
I do want to support some of that if I also understood that it somehow reduced consumption, because that electric rates are going up, and so the more we electrify, the more cost is going to go up. So that's my concern there. But and what we brought this up, or I think I brought it up at the last budget meeting, understanding how we bond and what should be bond may be an opportunity for us here to spread out an initial cost over a period of time. So that's why I really like to understand how much money we totally have bonded now, what's our total expense now, which we have data on that, they showed us. But to understand is our debt manageable, or do we have room to do some of these things that we can then bond out over a period of time? So.
Okay, thank you. Veronica?
I would also like to understand that better, Randy, so thank you. I think I need to dive more into the details of the green facilities plan here, but I think I'm inclined to lean in the direction of not postponing the proposed work. I think we know, like, there's costs on the climate change end and like energy, cleanliness of energy use, and that will incur by pushing this into the future. There's direct financial costs that will incur now by paying for it now. It is not clear to me that it will be or feel less financially expensive to do this later than now. And I think this was a broad point I threw out into the world at our last budget hearing, that if there were something particularly costly about this year, the 2025 budget, that we expected to be temporary, I would be having different thoughts. But I don't see any reason to expect that the budget situation with all the things the costs we have to pay and the lack of income coming in relatively is going to be better in 2026 or 2027 or so on. If it were, that might be a reason to postpone something, but otherwise, I think if we want results, we have to pay for them, and that takes money, and that's okay, because unless, I think it's unrealistic to say we'll do it later unless we have a specific plan that financially things are going to be better later. Otherwise, postponing we shouldn't do it unless we're really considering maybe we will never do this, and I don't want to just stop our green facilities plan at its current state, or at its current, whatever we've already committed, whatever's already been literally begun.
Thank you. I know at the county, it's very similar to what's happened for me and for a lot of other people on a residential basis, so I've been dealing with this for years. But for the county, we know that a lot of the plans that we've had have doubled in price since we first initially decided we wanted to do them. So the prices aren't going down, same as construction. I know going back, I'll just mention one part of all the different things we've done to our house, but going back to when we put the solar panels in, the return on investment increased exponentially quicker than we thought, because we didn't anticipate that NYSEG was going to raise the prices the way they were going to. That was not anticipated. And we have not even gone back and refactored the recent increase. But I can't remember if we anticipated 12 years the payback, but it wound up being 9 or 10. And same thing with our geothermal. It's just, again, but I look at the prices of installing each of those things now, if I were to go back and do them now, and the prices are way exponential. So when is the time to install these things? Yesterday? Yeah, so, or now. So thank you. Any other comments on this? All right, so I wanted to mention regarding, Amanda asked about this being forwarded to us. And the last resolve, this says this is forwarded to also the Facilities and Infrastructure Committee. And now we know that it's a little awkward because planning reports to a number of committees, and so for their green facilities part, they've been reporting to F&I. And so we're kind of slightly removed from that process, even though we deal with most environmental things. So if you're interested, I will be in helping or coming with me to, or tuning in to attend the F&I meeting. And so hopefully that they'll be forwarded this. I'm going to encourage them to put this on their agenda at their meeting next Thursday at 9 a.m.
Randy and I are both members of that.
You're both that?
Committee, so we can make sure that that's shared, and we can echo the conversation we had here today.
Okay, and yeah, and also I'll be there too. And so again, they're being sent that, so I hope they add that to their agenda for discussion. All right, thank you very much. Okay, the next part, next thing we have is also the case board, and this is establishing, page 16, establishing the Tompkins County Climate and Sustainable Energy Case Board Advisory Board as a permanent advisory board to the Tompkins County Legislature.
I'll move that.
Okay.
Unless you want.
Greg, no, go ahead. Greg is moving it. Veronica is seconding it. So we talked about the members of the board, and we've talked about their contributions to this committee on an ongoing basis. And I just want to highlight, let's see, I won't read them all, but in the fourth whereas are some of the things that they've advised us on. It's a long paragraph. And so these are experts in our community that volunteer their time, and we're really lucky that it's actually a very vibrant and popular advisory board that they have to turn experts away, which the first time I heard some of the people that were like not able to get on to the board just because, you know, they have so many folks that are interested in it. You know, a couple of people that weren't able to get onto it one year, I was just flabbergasted. Really experts, not just in our community, but they're nationwide experts in this, and other people interested in our community. And so really want to thank them for all the work that they do, and we're really lucky to have them. Any discussion, Amanda?
Well, to that point, I mean, there could be more than 11 members. I mean, I don't know how that number was chosen originally, but I think if they feel like they're turning people away, and I don't know, Brittany?
Yeah, Brittany mentioned about they'll need to update their bylaws. Do you want to say anything else about that?
Katie also has a hand up.
Pardon me? Oh.
Katie can go ahead.
Katie?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention when CASE was formed, as Brian said earlier, it was building off of a number of different energy advisory boards, and it was determined that that size was a good size to keep a high-functioning board with the technical items they need to focus on. Sometimes when boards get larger, it's actually harder to manage and harder to have them be able to focus in on items of particular importance to the county. So it was a conscious decision at the time. Of course, it could be revised. It's been many years since then, but that was our experience working with other energy committees that we had formed over the years.
Well, maybe in their re-looking at the bylaws, they could consider that for themselves and decide if it makes sense to continue with that 11 or bump it up a little bit or not.
Right.
That was something that I was going to contact Sarah, the Culata, and see if they wanted to, because they have to update their bylaws with this because they don't necessarily have staggered terms like we see in other advisory boards. So they would need to establish that, and in doing that, they can expand their board member numbers.
Right, and then, so my other question was also about the bylaws and just that, and following the template and that you guys have established that make sure they're, you know, following our policy. And then just a question about that last whereas that relates to the bylaws. Should that be a resolved?
Which one is that?
It's on page 17, the last whereas that talks about the bylaws. I just wonder if that should be a resolved that they will change their bylaws, because that's more of a action. I don't know if it matters, but maybe.
Could change it.
Oh, whereas upon the adoption of the whereas that they will do that.
I would agree with the resolved.
Yeah,
Get it resolved.
I would almost, is that almost the manifest? Could that be a manifest, or is that too big of a change? Should we do an amendment? Okay, would you like to?
I would make an amendment to change that last whereas on packet page 17 to a resolved. Resolved upon the adoption of this resolution establishing the case board as a permanent advisory board to the Tompkins County Legislature, the board will update its bylaws.
Okay, that's, do we have a second on that? Okay. Although, it's a second by Greg? Or we could do it, is it friendly?
Yeah, it's okay with me.
Okay.
It's friendly, okay, so that one's good. Any other suggestions on edits? Any other comments?
If I may, sorry, to Amanda's point, I worry if we only leave 11 members, it'll stay 11 members. If there's a need or desire to expand that, should that say composed of, 11 not to exceed, something like that? Or, I know we don't like that.
But that's in
Well,
your bylaws.
Right. It does say 11 members at the beginning of the resolution. Are you saying
Oh, I
like
see.
maybe?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, in this resolution, if there is a need to make another seat or two, right? I'm not thinking like a 25-person board.
Yeah.
Right, but if there's a desire from the case board to do that, great. If not, if 11 members is working, then let's not mess it up.
I think that if they're, it just says composed of 11 members, we could maybe add a word in currently composed of 11 members. That way it doesn't bind them.
We could do that, but also the way that I read this was that in those resolutions, that's how many people
Are
were
currently in there.
on that board at that time. They can change that number at any point with their bylaws.
But their bylaws come back to the program committee to approve and then to the legislature to approve.
Yes. Yep.
Right.
Okay, so then this is fine. If that's the
Okay.
interpretation and it's on the record, I'm fine with
Yeah,
that.
and I think they've heard us and they can reconsider. And does Kristen McCarthy go to those? Yeah, so.
Yes, and for instance, EMC, Environmental Management Council, they're working on theirs, and that's going through. So in the next few months or so, the case board can work on theirs.
Yeah, great.
And then we'll have a chance to approve it. Anything else? Okay, all those in favor of this resolution with the case board continuing? That's unanimous. Thank you very much to the case board. Thank you, and congratulations. You're a permanent board. Well, it still has to go through the legislature, but you have the full approval of the peak committee. And
the idea of potentially changing the number in our membership.
And that's up to you. And I mentioned about advising us. You also advise and work with our planning staff and other staff too. So thank you for all of that. I know it's very, very helpful. All right, thank you. And now you might not want to miss this. We're going to have a special do we have a special art thing? Or didn't it get here today?
Well, I don't. Really? Were you serious?
Yeah.
I don't have a presentation, but I could share it afterwards.
Okay. This will be afterwards, but go ahead. Did you want to say?
I didn't realize you were actually serious. My son makes digital art, and he made an amazing piece of art with a transparent boot with mountains on the inside of the boot, like for me. He made it for me. So I posted it, and Annie was like, you should bring that to Peak. I thought you were totally kidding. But I can share it with the committee afterwards. It's very wonderful art.
I was willing to add a new section to
environmental art.
Environmental art.
That's awesome.
We could be so we'll consider that for next time, and we'll add that in, environmental art. We'll be the only committee that has that.
That's
Not saying
true.
we're the best committee, but
That's
we'll be
true.
the only committee.
That would take this committee up a notch if you had environmental art, for sure.
Okay, any committee member reports? Okay, and since we don't have an art piece to talk about today, I say we're adjourned and at 11:08. And thank you, everybody, for coming today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Annie.
Oh, and we didn't have any minutes for this meeting. We'll have them for next meeting.